of scotch a day, 8 cans of special brew. I was also a heroin addict, and you know, it's just, God just amazes me where He's brought me from. You know, because when, you know, I came from a good family, and my father was a professional racing cyclist, and you know, I found I was dissatisfied in myself with where I came from, and I came from South London as well. Found myself in East London working amongst West Ham fans when I'm a Millwall supporter, which is a bit of a shock to the system. But you know, when I was 16, I started working. My dad made quite a lot of money from his sporting career, and he owned a chain of jewellers shops, and I worked in those jeweller shops, and so I left school when I was 15, started working in those shops, and then I'd already started smoking and drinking, but I took an acid tab, and when I took this acid tab, it completely blew my mind, and I thought that I'd stepped through another doorway into another world. And this world that I discovered was the world that I wanted to be in all the time, and I just set my life up to be in this world all the time, and that, for me, that's what life was about. And you know, I became a drug dealer. I was running around in Bromley and around these parts here, and you know, I ended up with like 100 kilo of base amphetamine in a fridge, and involved with all sorts of people. I won't go into too much detail about what I was actually involved in, but I know that God's hand was on my life through that situation. All the times I had guns pointing at me and stuff like that. I know that God's brought me out of that situation. And all my family, when I was, I really thought I was Jack the Lad at the time, and I was in business partnership with my brother-in-law, and you know, we was buying and selling Mark II Jaguars and E-type Jaguars, and we had a jet ski business in the south of France, and you know, I thought this was what life was all about, making money and basically running around being Jack the Lad. And then suddenly something happened in my family. One of my little sisters became a born-again Christian and started praying for the rest of the family. There was 4 of us, and she started praying for our family. And before I knew what had happened, my other sister had become a born-again Christian, and then my mother became a born-again Christian, and my girlfriend became a born-again Christian. And you know, my brother-in-law, who I was in partnership with at the time, he came up to me and said, "Dave, your sister's gone mad. She won't stop talking about Jesus all the time." And you know, I said to him, "No, it's a phase she's going through. Sure, you know, it's going to stop. It's just a phase she's going through. Don't worry about it, Mick." You know, and so before I know where I am, he's coming up to me, and he's become a born-again Christian now. And this was absolutely ruined our business arrangement, because you know, he was no longer able to lie about how much we paid for the cars and stuff like this, and you know, he was telling everyone how much we paid for them. And I was like, said, "You know, you've lost the plot, Mick." You know, and it's caused a schism in my family. I knew something had happened to him, but I started going to a few Christian meetings, and you know, I didn't like what I saw, and I decided that these people were definitely not for me. And you know, I think I even said the sinner's prayer, and went to a meeting and said the sinner's prayer and paid lip service to it. But I talked myself out of it, you know. But for 15 years this went on, and throughout those 15 years my life got worse and worse. I was injecting amphetamine sulfate into my veins every morning when I got up, and then the drugs were helping me be able to sort of keep what was a normal front, and I was managing to run these businesses. I was involved in, I was a market trader, and I was a builder, and as a car dealer, and I was still managing to keep it together, smoking crack cocaine in the daytimes. And I always said I'd never touch heroin, you know, because I always said heroin is the one, you know, that's be the end of it. I'll never touch heroin. But I ended up dabbling in heroin just a little bit at first, and whereas the other drugs, I thought I had them mastered. You know, heroin completely started dictating to me what I did, when and where I got up, and what I did, and you know, this became my master, and this destroyed me, heroin. And you know, throughout those 15 years, I was sunk to the lowest point. And then my family, they used to come around, they used to witness for me. They was praying for me constantly, and they used to put scriptures through my door occasionally, you know. And I never told them, but when they used to go away, I used to look these scriptures up, right? And they never knew that. And eventually, but at the back of my mind, even though to their faces, I never ever and would admit it, that it was going in. The seeds had been sown in my heart. This took around over for 15 years. And they continued to pray for me. And then when I reached the point, and I got down on my knees and I prayed that prayer from my heart. And then I cried out to God. Then I knew God was real. And because I felt waves of the Holy Spirit come over me, started praying in tongues. And I knew at that moment that I'd been accepted by God. And that was going to be the answer to all my problems. I thought that would be the answer to my problems. I was a heroin addict, so I tried to stop drugs. I managed to stop for a week, slipped back into it, got off it again, went and got baptised, because that's what you do as a Christian. And then things got worse. I went back to heroin, even worse. Then I managed to stop heroin, and then I realised I've got a drink problem. And so I was drinking, and I thought I need to find out about God. So I decided to do theology, and went off to college and left London. I knew I had to get out of London because I knew too many people putting drugs through my door. And so I went to college down in the southwest to study theology, and I was just still drinking heavily. Even though I was a Christian, I was drinking heavily, and I managed to convince myself it was okay to do this because Jesus had turned the water into wine. And I suddenly had heard about this place called Teen Challenge, and when I looked at the programme, I thought, that's not for me. I don't need that. I can do this. No, God's going to help me here. God's going to help me out of my situation. And I looked at it, and then when they explained what it involved, I definitely didn't want to get involved. It was like too much. It was like the army. And so I went for an interview, but halfway through my college course, and then it was another 2 years before I actually turned up on the doorstep of Teen Challenge to start the programme. Now, when I went to Teen Challenge, I turned up there with a degree in theology and thought I knew everything about, I was in a mess, but I was spouting theology, and, I thought I knew it all. And I got there, I knew instantly these guys had something that I didn't have in my life. They had a relationship with God. And, I knew I'd come to the place where I belonged, and God wanted me. And that was 6 years ago now. And since then, God has completely transformed my life, I went in there, it took me 5 days to stop smelling of whiskey, they said to me. They said, you still stunk of it after 5 days. No medication to come off, just prayer. And I came off of it. And, I used to run from the police. I used to run from, I said to look at Graham there. I used to drive around, and I used to be in my mirrors all the time because I was always up to something, and that was my worst enemy. And I've been in jail, I've been in Wandsworth. In those days it was 24-hour bang up, with slop out, and yes, I used to, and now God has just transformed my life. I've got the most beautiful wife in the world, I believe, and the police are ringing me up now. Even tonight, I've got the superintendent of Hackney ringing me up, asking me how to do street outreach and what we should do next, and all this. And I just give God all the glory for what He's done in my life. And I want to say to anyone here, is anyone here who's struggling with drugs, there's a way out of your situation. And I believe the first step is to make a commitment to Christ and not pay lip service, to make a cry out to God from your heart. Because when I did that, it was then I knew I've been accepted. And when you do that, God has a plan for your life. And He wants to help you out of your situation. It might be Teen Challenge, it might not be Teen Challenge. Teen Challenge is a ministry that is available, and we're there for the churches. We see our rehabs and our ministry buses as the church's resources, and so that's there for you. But the first step is to make that commitment to the Lord. Ask Him into your heart, and then we'll see what the Lord does in your life. Now we're here for the remainder, and the guys are here. If anyone wants to talk to us at all about the Lord or about the programme, we're here until as long as it takes. So that's it. I'm going to hand back to Chris now, and that's it. I want to thank you for having us here tonight. As I say, by the way, I nearly forgot. If you want to support the ministry of Teen Challenge, you can. We had the funding stopped several years ago, and we used to receive £600,000 a year funding from the government, and when they looked at our programme and saw that we did life application Bible study, they said you've got to let people study from the Quran and make it an interfaith ministry, and you had to change the programme, which we weren't able to do, so they withdrew the funding. And so since then we had to shut our ladies centre in London. We still have a ladies centre though down in Wales, but we had to shut that one in London, but we aim to reopen that. And if you want to if you want to support this ministry, you can. We've got a desk at the back there, and we just ask for a contribution of a minimum of £5 a month, and then we give you a copy of The Cross and the Switchblade. Also, if you want to put down for a volunteer, please fill in that thing that Chris was waving just then. There's a clipboard there. Please put your names on there and we'll contact you. So I want to thank you so much for having us. Thanks, Chris, for inviting